remember that. How I know that song. I remember sitting in the moonlight and that feeling.
The Little Mermaid, Ariel's beginning. On the surface, it may seem like your typical direct-to-video Disney animated sequel, but this one in particular is quite significant and stands out from the rest, as this movie is actually the last of its kind. Some may recall during both the 1990s and the 2000s, when Disney filled the market with sequels to their animated classics that went straight to home media. In fact, at the most, Disney could pump out 5 or even 6 of these sequels in 1 year. But then there was a massive shakeup at Disney in 2006, when John Lasseter became the chief creative officer of the company's entire animation division. And one of his first major actions was to stop the direct-to-video follow-ups. While some were cancelled because of this, like sequels to Pinocchio, The Aristocats, and Chicken Little, the ones that were ahead in production remained as the last ones to be made, with Ariel's Beginning being the final film of that trend to be released on August 26, 2008. Following afterwards, until the studio responsible for these films ended up closing in mid-2018, all they were able to develop since were just the Tinkerbell and Planes movies. But now that we're heading under the sea to see the Mermaid's origins, did the direct-to-video Disney sequels finish on a high note, or did Ariel's Beginning start off like a sunken ship? Let's find out. The story. For the prequel of The Little Mermaid, the story focuses on the consequences of a tragic event from the royal family of Atlantica's past, and that is the death of Ariel's mother, Queen Athena. Even 10 years later since, the kingdom became a highly strict, unpleasant, and dull area with a king that has never felt happiness for years. But what's even worse, it also ended up making the movie feel unpleasant and dull to watch. For the most part, the biggest question to ask regarding this movie is, really? That's it? Because it always seems to make a big deal out of very little. Probably the biggest conflict to find in this is how King Triton banned all music in his kingdom, and it's up to Ariel and her friends to find a way to make him happy again and have love and music return to Atlantica. So really, the big goal is to have music back to save the morale of the kingdom. Underwhelming would be a too generous word to describe this.
We heard music, Chief.
Huh? Music? The princess was making music?
The princess wasn't making music. He was.
Music is against the law! Take him to the dungeon!
In a way, there are some narrative similarities between this and Pixar's Coco. Except replace everything that made Coco so great with The Little Mermaid. Actually, a direct-to-video version of The Little Mermaid. It could have had potential to go deep into the subject of finding peace with the death of a loved one, and make it a lot more about King Triton and his love he had for Athena. But as a direct-to-video Disney follow-up, there wasn't enough thought or care put into it to give this any legit substance. Of course, with a plot like this, it's easily predictable, it does little to compensate for the cliches, and surprisingly enough, this movie is mostly a downer. With the way things are so strict and gloomy in the kingdom and giving Ariel very little to do, it gives the film this melancholy tone that encompasses the feature much more than it should. And whatever is meant to be more optimistic to balance those moments out are not enjoyable enough to lift audiences' spirits after seeing Ariel being depressed. Also, some could say that, like the original, it's a musical with a few moments where the characters get to sing. But...
And they'll be looking very hard. A straw to break Sebastian's back, a teeny dint, a tiny crack. A dowdy double take. What I need is one mistake.
I'm gonna be honest, I'm gonna skip the song segments on this one because not only are there just 2 new songs here, but the less I talk about them, the better. That and you know they're bad when the best thing this movie can do musically is license Jump in the Line and use that as its big upbeat song. With a mostly depressing mood, a dull plot, and conflict that's just making mountains out of a molehill, the story gives off the energy that Disney never had a genuine idea for a Little Mermaid prequel. The animation. If there is one good thing to say about the direct-to-video Disney sequels, is that they do improve their animation with time. In the 1990s, they can be laughably bad. But then as the 2000s continue, the visuals do get progressively better with every film they release. And in the case of the last one, with Ariel's beginning, the animation is pretty impressive. Of course, it's nowhere near the top quality standards of the original, but it is still well made on its own. As a follow-up to Disney's The Little Mermaid, it does stay true to many of its signature traits, including the character designs of the Disney-esque mermaids and the wide variety of cartoony sea creatures, the use of vibrant colors, and some of the underwater animation like some of the hair physics and effects like bubbles. In terms of what it adds on its own, it's mainly from the character animation, where it's mostly very smooth and doesn't shy away from being expressive and play with the cast. If anything, it does put more effort so that it doesn't have that television quality and have the animation prove itself that it is a feature film, even if it wasn't released in theaters. It also does try a bit more to amp up the musical numbers to feel like a highlighted moment, like with Ariel's passionate movements, Marina's wide choice of fashion, and Sebastian taking the stage. Granted, while it is mostly smooth and well handled, it's not often perfect and can happen when an animation slip-up is spotted.
I know just where to go!
But I wouldn't say everything in the animation is great. Not terrible to criticize, but nothing that's awe-inspiring either. The backgrounds are well made, but there's no area outside the castle that looks like it's worth exploring, and the music box is somehow the only prominent thing that's in CGI. Again, looks fine on its own, but doesn't blend well with the hand-drawn characters holding it. While it's not up to the standards as what the masters did at Disney Animation, the animation in here did the best job in bringing back the spirit of The Little Mermaid. The characters. As a prequel to The Little Mermaid, the main hook for fans would be to learn more about their favorite characters. How people like Ariel, Sebastian, Flounder, and King Triton all became the beloved characters we all recognize in the original film. As a direct-to-video Disney follow-up, this movie proudly proclaims to its fans, if that is what you're looking for, well, too bad. We don't have enough time or the resource to put that kind of quality in this. Unsurprisingly, the familiar characters all received a downgrade where there's nothing new that's memorable about them, and some have even lost their likability in this. In the case of Ariel, her role as the protagonist is the first to be the most serious to take action to change the status quo in the kingdom. As for her motive, the most I could find is because she's just bored of everything, and I can't blame her for that since most of the things happening in the film is unexciting and unpleasant. It doesn't really gain anything to her character, it's more like she has to do it because, well, what else is the movie gonna do? There's King Triton, who's been reduced to the very strict and grumpy dad. Sebastian is Triton's main assistant and secretly a prominent member of an underground music club, and Flounder had potential to present how he and Ariel became friends, but the film might have ended up giving him the wrong personality compared to the first film, where now he's more rebellious and all about jamming to music, which causes his personality to be a lot more annoying.
Oh, yeah, right, got it.
Come on, man, you gonna blow it for all of us.
Ooh, blow good.
It's there on the soundtrack.
But if there is one good thing this movie did outside of the animation, the one thing that it does to add to the Little Mermaid world is that it gave Ariel's sisters their own personalities. Sure, some can argue that they're just one-dimensional tropes, but it's still an upgrade compared to what they had in the original, which was literally nothing. Their role is essentially to show how Ariel is not alone with her sentiments, that despite not doing much about it, they also want things to be like how it was when their mother was alive, while simultaneously have their little quirks to make them individually unique. And who knows, maybe viewers might find one that stands out to them from the rest. Like, I'll admit that there's something about Arista that sticks out to me with her fun, quirky personality and how she brings out a lot of Rosalina vibes. Like, even compared to Ariel, I do actually find that she's actually really attractive. I better stop getting sidetracked and get back to the review. And then there is Marina Del Rey, the new villain of the feature, accompanied by the soft-hearted manatee, Benjamin. Like the story, she's a character that raises the question, that's it? As Triton's governess, her true enemy isn't really Ariel or Triton himself, but rather has a grudge against Sebastian and wants him out of the picture so that she can ultimately be the king's confidant. Sure, she has some electric eels that make her a threat, but other than that, she's just overall weak. A weak villain with weak motives and a weak personality that almost feels like she's just a weak Yzma ripoff. While it's nice that it gave more to the sisters, the film had barely anything to give to the rest of the characters. More than ever, this movie made me relate so much to Ariel, where watching this made me feel bored out of my mind and unhappy and just want to escape so that I can spend my time on something much more enjoyable. The Little Mermaid, Ariel's Beginning, concluded the direct-to-video Disney sequel lineup on a low and depressing note. Sure, it does have elements that are well done, like some nice-looking animation and giving Ariel's sisters their own personalities, but that still doesn't change how this turned out to be a soullessly manufactured Disney prequel meant to keep cashing in on The Little Mermaid due to its very poor writing that resulted in a weak and unpleasant story, wasted potential, some pretty bad songs, and downgraded characters. Normally, I'd say that it's best to just stick with the original film, of course, but I'd only recommend this one to the most die-hard fans of The Little Mermaid. The ones that really want to know so much more about the world and the characters that live there. Other than that though, all it did was made me wish I was watching the first movie instead. And for the melancholy time I've spent with this movie, I have to give this the Animat seal of garbage. Maybe it could have been worse, but it's probably for the best that Disney stopped after this one. Hey guys, this is Animat, and as you could tell, yeah, I didn't really like this movie all that much. Now, I know that some of you may say that at this point that it shouldn't really be that surprising, considering that I am talking about a direct-to-video Disney animated follow-up, which in this case is one for The Little Mermaid, or a Little Mermaid prequel. I shouldn't really expecting all that much to begin with, so how is it that I seem that much surprised that this movie is not as good as it seems? Well, there is a little bit of a reason for that, because I know for as much as people like to crap on the Disney direct-to-video sequels and prequels and all that kind of stuff, you gotta admit that as time moves on, they do get a little bit progressively better. And I don't necessarily just mean their animation, but sometimes the quality of the movies themselves do get better. Now, I know that sometimes in their later years, there are a few notable bad ones as well, and on average, they can be just forgettable. And I mean, even at that, that is kind of an improvement to before, where the average is pretty bad or even laughably bad. But then there are times where a lot of the later films can actually get very good, and sometimes they could actually be very pleasant surprises. And there are a lot of people out there who would go and praise some of them. Like some of the more notable ones that are often featured as some of the better direct-to-video Disney follow-ups would go and include Bambi 2 and Cinderella 3, which those ones are released near the end of the Disney direct-to-video sequel lineup. And in the case of The Little Mermaid Ariel's Beginnings, you'd think that considering it is the last one, that there would be some form of effort into it. That considering that the animators and the people, the filmmakers, and all the crew, they're not working on anything else, that you'd think that they would go and give this a bit of a grand finale, or at least turn out something a bit decent. But that's not really the case here. That this actually ended up as a downer overall. And I mean, this is The Little Mermaid. It shouldn't be as depressing as it is. And more specifically, though, it shouldn't necessarily be as depressing as the original Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale. But also, at the same time, though, I will admit that there are some good things into it. Now, this isn't all terrible, but there is some actual form of effort that was included into this movie. Like, the animation is fantastic. Sure, it's not as good as the original, but you could tell that there was a lot of effort put into it, and the quality is actually quite impressive, and it does remain true to the traditions of the original Little Mermaid in the first place. And also, at the same time, you got the sisters as well that got a significant upgrade from before. Yeah, sure, technically their personalities isn't necessarily all that memorable, and they could be written off as just one-dimensional tropes and not really, well, did I say not that memorable? But then again, at least they are more memorable, and at least they do have more of a significant role compared to the original, where, again, they literally had nothing. And at least now that they do have their own significant personality, there are some that maybe you would find one that, you know, could stand out from the rest because you would feel more relatable to them, or you might find one of them to be more attractive than some of the others, even when compared to Ariel. There is that, but even with those positive things, even with the animation and the sisters, that doesn't necessarily change the overall movie itself for not really being that good, for having such weak writing, and feels like all the time that all they're doing is just making a mountain out of a molehill, and really feeling like there's not much of a purpose to why we really need a Little Mermaid prequel. So overall, considering all these factors about how it is one of the later direct-to-video Disney sequels, or prequel in this case, and considering that there is a lot of potential to this outside of the stuff that I've mentioned, like overall, it just really came out as a disappointment. So yeah, I think it's safe to say that it's best we all stick with the original. Unless, like, you really want to know so much more about, like, the world of The Little Mermaid. But anyways, I think it is time that I should go and move on from Ariel's Beginning, and that I should go and put up a new beginning to a Patreon request. And this time around is going to be from Vanessa Jurin. So I would like to go and start things off by saying that if you guys would like to be like Vanessa, and you want to go and get some amazing rewards and support my work at the same time, and with these rewards, you can actually get, but not limited to, watching my videos before anyone else, then all you have to do is go to patreon.com/animat. But at the same time, if you guys would like to go and suggest an animated film you would like me to review and I would put onto the animation hat, then all you have to do is write me an email at animatsreviews@gmail.com. Okay, so now with all that said, what is it that Vanessa asked me to go and review? Well, with her requested movie, I'm gonna be very honest. You know, the one that she suggested is something that I haven't seen before, but it could potentially be something that I haven't done in a long time, or at least as I am recording this, that I haven't done in a while, and that is review a great animated feature. Now, I've, of course, reviewed a lot of good movies that, you know, they are well done, but nothing really that stands out very well that is something that is so memorable and so well done. You know, something that is actually great per se. And maybe with this one,
it could actually fit the bill if it is as good as I keep hearing that people say it is. And with that said, I think it also serves as another really good thing where I can finally go and with this review pay my respects to one of the more beloved and more respected animation studios in Japan, Kyoto Animation.
Knock it off!
Sorry.